Welcome back to the deep dive. There are few things as, well, central to our happiness, our well-being, as our romantic relationships. They're this source of incredible joy, right?
Oh,
Profound connection. But let's be honest, sometimes a fair bit of head-scratching complexity too.
definitely.
So today, we're going to dive far beyond the usual surface-level advice. We want to get right into the deep psychological stuff, the communicative patterns that often run our relationships from, behind the scenes, whether we realize it or not.
That's exactly right. And our mission here, really, in this deep dive is to give you a kind of shortcut. A shortcut to truly understanding the science behind healthy relationships.
Okay.
We'll explore how our earliest experiences kind of lay down this blueprint for adult love, and also how that everyday dance, our communication, can either solidify things or subtly erode the very bonds we cherish. We're basically pulling back the curtain on the research, hoping to give you those aha moments about your own connections.
Yeah, I love those moments. And to do that, we've gathered, quite a stack of sources, really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
We're talking about groundbreaking academic papers on attachment processes, detailed studies on communication patterns, and this includes a really unique deep dive into an Asian cultural perspective, which I found fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. That adds a whole different layer.
And some really interesting research on the very architecture of trust itself.
So by the end of our conversation, the idea is you won't just know what makes relationships thrive.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you'll genuinely grasp why these elements are so powerful.
Right.
Get ready to maybe see your relationships past and present through a brand new lens.
Okay, I'm ready. So let's start right at the beginning then. How we learn to love, this foundational blueprint formed by attachment theory. Now, most of us, I think, when we hear attachment theory, we immediately think of like infants and their caregivers, right? Yeah. John Bowlby's original work back in the 70s was all about that tiny human-parent bond.
Yeah, that's where it started.
But how on earth does that translate to us as adults navigating, the complexities of romantic partnerships?
It's a brilliant leap, really, and that's where Bowlby's insights became truly revolutionary. He realized attachment isn't just some childhood phase you grow out of.
Whoa.
It's a system that's active throughout our entire lives. So as adults, our romantic partners, they often become our primary attachment figures.
Okay, so they step into that role.
Exactly. They step into that role of fulfilling our fundamental needs for safety, security, comfort, much like our early caregivers did.
Right.
So when we feel threatened, maybe rejected, or just stressed out, this whole system activates. It prompts us to turn to our partner to help regulate those negative feelings, restore our sense of well-being.
So it's about finding that felt security. That term really resonates. That means if you're having just a terrible day or facing a really tough challenge, turning to your partner for comfort isn't just like a preference. It's a deep-seated, healthy need.
Absolutely. It's normative.
And when they respond with reassurance and support, it reinforces that security. Does this attachment system kind of operate on its own, or does it connect with other fundamental human drives?
Oh, it's beautifully interconnected. Think about it, right?
Yeah.
But our caregiving system, it makes us instinctively sort of attuned to our partner's distress. It compels us to protect and support them.
Yeah.
Even our sexual behavior, it's not just about reproduction. It intertwines by offering comfort and, powerfully strengthening that attachment bond.
Okay.
And crucially, this feeling of having a secure base, it actually frees us up. It allows us to go out, explore the world, pursue our goals, engage in work, or play with more confidence because we know our attachment figure is there if we need them.
That paints a really holistic picture. It's not just one thing. Now, you mentioned internal working models. What exactly are those? How do they fit into this lifelong blueprint?
Right. Internal working models, or IWMs, they're essentially your deeply ingrained, emotionally loaded mental maps. They're built from all your past experiences, especially with early caregivers.
Okay, like a history.
Kind of, yeah. Think of them as internal blueprints that shape your fundamental expectations about relationships. Like, will others be available, responsive, reliable when I need them? And just as important, am I worthy of receiving that kind of love and care? That's a big part of it, too.
Wow.
And these models, they operate both consciously and sometimes less consciously, subtly guiding our actions and reactions in pretty much every relationship.
That's a significant insight, that it's not just about what you expect from others, but this deep-seated belief about whether you deserve that love and care.
Exactly.
This self-worth piece.
Yeah.
It often quietly dictates who you choose, how you act, how much you let yourself receive, maybe?
Precisely. It underlies so much.
But are these blueprints fixed then? Once they're formed in childhood, are we stuck? Or is there any flexibility? Can they ever change?
That's where it gets really hopeful, actually. While IWMs, they do tend to be pretty stable within a specific relationship, theorists suggest they absolutely can be revised over our lives. Think about it. You move from relying on parents to peers, maybe dating partners, then eventually a spouse or long-term partner.
Right. Different figures.
Exactly. Each significant relationship can offer experiences that actively challenge your existing blueprint.
Like what kind of experiences?
Well, for example, being in a deeply satisfying marriage, maybe feeling profoundly supported during a stressful time like a pregnancy. Experiences like that can actually shift your attachment style towards greater security.
Really?
Yeah. It means we're not, doomed by our past. We have this capacity for growth and change.
That's truly fascinating and really quite optimistic, actually.
Yeah.
That these aren't just immutable traits we're stuck with.
Not at all.
So if our blueprints can shift, how do we even begin to categorize the different relationship styles these blueprints create in adulthood? How do they manifest?
Well, in adults, we typically understand these styles along two key dimensions: anxiety and avoidance. When both of these are low, that's what we call a secure attachment style. These individuals, they're generally comfortable with intimacy and independence. They trust their partners will be there when needed. It's a kind of balanced state.
Okay, that sounds like the ideal, maybe.
Yeah.
So what about when those dimensions are high?
Right. So if someone is high in anxiety but low in avoidance, they tend towards an anxious style, sometimes called preoccupied.
Anxious. Okay.
Think of it like their internal alarm system is kind of stuck on high alert when it comes to relationships. They desire a lot of closeness, sometimes excessive closeness. They worry intensely about abandonment and might constantly question their own worthiness of love. So when they feel threatened, even slightly, they exhibit what's called hyperactivation.
Hyperactivation, what does that look like?
It means heightened distress, persistently seeking proximity, needing lots of reassurance. So maybe their partner's text is delayed by an hour. An anxious individual might immediately spiral, thinking, are they mad? Did I do something wrong? Do they still care? They're constantly seeking that reassurance to quiet that internal alarm.
Okay, I can picture that. And then the opposite. For someone high in avoidance, what's their pattern?
Conversely, the avoidant individual, high in avoidance, low in anxiety, they're generally uncomfortable with too much closeness. They prefer emotional distance, self-reliance.
Okay.
Their internal alarm system, when faced with a threat or intense emotion, kind of hits snooze or even off. They use what we call deactivation strategies.
Deactivation. So they just shut down?
Sort of. They minimize the distress, turn their attention away from it, rely heavily on themselves. So when conflict arises, they might physically withdraw or just emotionally distance themselves.
Right.
It's not necessarily because they don't care, but that emotional intensity feels threatening, and their go-to strategy is to minimize it by disengaging.
That makes sense.
Interestingly, though, even these individuals can show significant distress under really extreme chronic stress, like going through a divorce, for instance. The system isn't totally switched off.
Okay, that's an important nuance. It paints such clear pictures of these internal responses. So how do these internal blueprints, these IWMs, actually translate into our everyday interactions, our perceptions? What does this mean for how we act?
Well, these internal working models, they act as powerful filters, basically. They guide where our attention goes, what we remember, how we interpret everything in our relationships.
Like selective attention.
Exactly. For instance, avoidant individuals, they tend to divert their attention away from relationship-relevant emotional information. It seems to be a subconscious protective mechanism, almost like an emotional shield, right? To prevent activating their attachment system and the potential distress that comes with it. They might literally just tune out emotional cues that could bring them closer.
Wow, okay. And the anxious types?
On the flip side, anxious individuals might chronically monitor their partner's availability, even when there's no obvious threat. They're kind of scanning for signs, always a little on edge.
Hypervigilant.
Yeah, you could say that. And they're also more prone to interpreting a partner's negative behavior pessimistically, maybe assigning hostile intent to even ambiguous actions like that late text message we mentioned.
And I guess that could become a self-fulfilling prophecy?
Sadly, yes. This cognitive bias can perpetuate their own distress and, in a sort of vicious cycle, often frustrates partners, which might lead to the very withdrawal or distance the anxious person fears most.
Oof. I can see how those patterns would unfortunately reinforce themselves over time. It seems like this also shapes our overall relationship goals then.
Absolutely.
Secure individuals kind of naturally balance intimacy and independence.
Right.
Anxious individuals push for more intimacy.
Yeah, they prioritize closeness.
And avoidant individuals, as you said, they kind of restrict it. They value autonomy more.
Exactly. And this brings us right to a really crucial element: trust.
Ah, yes. Trust.
Our personal history, things like experiencing parental divorce or maybe previous relationship breakdowns, that stuff is consistently linked to lower trust in our adult romantic relationships. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
But what's fascinating is how attachment styles interact with trust. For someone with anxious attachment, it's often not a direct distrust of the partner per se.
Oh. How does it work then?
Instead, their partner wanting personal space or independence isn't usually seen as healthy autonomy. It's perceived as a threat to the relationship itself.
I see. So the need for space feels like rejection.
Kind of, and that perception is what fundamentally erodes their trust. Now, for avoidant attachment, there seems to be a stronger direct link to lower trust.
Why is that?
Well, often because for them, trust simply isn't as central or maybe even as important in a relationship given their preference for self-reliance and emotional distance. They're not relying on the partner in the same way.
Okay, so we've really mapped out the internal world of attachment, those blueprints. Now let's explore how these inner worlds actually play out in our daily interactions.
Right, the external stuff.
Yeah, how we truly connect or sometimes disconnect through communication. We often focus, I think, on avoiding conflict, which is vital, obviously. But what about actively building those positive connections? I'm thinking about things like accommodation, which is how we handle disagreements.
Yeah.
And capitalization, which is how we react to good news. How do those fit in?
Well, traditionally, researchers often studied those two things separately: conflict management over here, responding to good news over there.
Okay.
But a really interesting recent study looking at Malaysian young adults, which gives us that unique non-Western perspective, actually looked at both simultaneously.
Oh, cool. What did that show?
It helped them understand the unique influences of each on overall relationship satisfaction. They identified 4 response types for both situations: handling conflict and celebrating good news.
Yeah.
Active constructive, passive constructive, active destructive, and passive destructive.
Okay, break those down a bit. What was the biggest takeaway from looking at them together?
The most impactful finding was crystal clear. An active constructive capitalization response had the strongest positive influence on relationship satisfaction.
Active constructive capitalization. So that's like,
That's when your partner shares good news, maybe a promotion, or even just a small win, and you react with genuine enthusiasm, excitement, support. Think like a really heartfelt, "that's amazing, tell me everything" kind of celebration.
got it. Really leaning in.
Exactly. Now, conversely, passive destructive responses were the most detrimental.
Passive destructive.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Ignoring them.
Yeah, things like ignoring your partner's good news, or maybe making a dismissive comment, or in conflict, completely avoiding the issue, just stonewalling. That stuff was really damaging. Interestingly, a passive constructive response, like a very mild, "oh, that's nice," to good news, or just sort of going along to get along in conflict without really engaging, that was only mildly helpful for positive news and not really effective at all for managing conflicts.
Wow. So just being not negative isn't enough, especially for the good stuff. You have to be actively positive.
Precisely. That active engagement makes a huge difference.
That really brings to mind that old idea that bad is stronger than good in relationships.
Ah, yes. The negativity bias.
Yeah. I've often heard it said, one zinger can erase 20 acts of kindness, or that successful marriages often show at least a 5-to-1 ratio of positive to negative interactions. Why is that? What's the psychology behind this negativity bias?
There are several key reasons why negative stuff often seems to carry more weight. First, there's expectancy violation.
Okay.
We generally expect our partners to treat us reasonably well, right? So when they do something negative, it deviates sharply from that expectation. It stands out more.
Ah, it breaks the pattern.
Exactly. Second, there's diagnosticity. Negative acts are often seen as more revealing of a person's true character than positive ones.
How so?
Well, if your partner is consistently late, you might think, they don't respect my time. That feels like diagnostic information about them. But if they're always on time, you might just think, well, that's normal. Positive actions can sometimes be attributed to just, social norms or trying to be nice. The negative feels more real somehow.
Interesting.
And third, there can be an extremity bias in research sometimes. Often, the negative events studied, like a major betrayal or a huge fight, are far more extreme and impactful than the typical positive interactions, which might be milder daily affirmations or shared jokes. So it can make strong negatives seem disproportionately potent compared to lots of small positives.
That distinction is crucial. It's not always apples to apples. You've also mentioned before this idea of positive and negative processes being bivariate, not bipolar. Can you unpack that a bit? It sounds important.
Absolutely. It's a really key concept. Bivariate, not bipolar, basically means that the positive stuff and the negative stuff in relationships aren't just opposite ends of a single spectrum.
Okay, not like a seesaw.
Exactly. Not like a seesaw where if one goes up, the other has to go down. It's more like there are two functionally independent systems. Think of it like having two separate dials on a soundboard.
Right.
You might have the conflict dial turned up a bit because you're navigating a tricky issue, but you can still crank the joy dial and the connection dial right up too at the same time. They're independent.
Okay, so you can have problems and positives coexisting strongly.
Precisely. And this is profoundly liberating, I think. It means you can have significant challenges in a relationship, real difficulties, and still be building a deeply fulfilling connection. And as long as you're actively seeking out and creating those positive experiences, you can't just wait for the absence of negative things.
Right, you have to pursue the good.
Yeah, it highlights that positive events often must be sought out and actively created, and that the accumulation, the sheer number of many milder, consistent positive events can often be more powerful in the long run than dodging fewer, stronger negative ones.
That's a powerful and really freeing concept. Very actionable, too. Now, let's take this one step further. Maybe, teacher, it's not just in our heads or our habits. You're saying it's in our bodies, too.
No, absolutely.
What role does something like oxytocin play here? We hear it called the love hormone or cuddle chemical.
That's absolutely right. The body is deeply, deeply involved in all of this. Intense positive social interactions, especially things involving affectionate physical contact, like hugs or even just sustained eye contact. They actually stimulate the release of oxytocin.
Okay.
And this neuropeptide, it's incredibly beneficial. It literally reduces our stress responses. It promotes feelings of affiliation and nurturance. And there's growing evidence it offers tangible long-term health benefits too. But here's the crucial part related to what we just discussed. Oxytocin production is stimulated by positive interaction itself.
Not just the lack of bad stuff.
Exactly. Not just the absence of negative interaction. You have to actively engage in that positive connection, the hug, the shared laugh, the supportive conversation to get that physiological boost.
So it's about actively generating those good feelings, those connections. You also mentioned the importance of shared intrinsically motivated activities. What does that mean and how does it help?
Right. Shared intrinsically motivated activities are basically doing things together just for the sheer pleasure of doing them. Not for any external reward, but because the activity itself is enjoyable and engaging.
Like hobbies.
Yeah, exactly. Pursuing hobbies together or experiences. Maybe it's hiking, cooking, learning a language, playing board games, whatever it is you both genuinely enjoy.
Right.
Doing these things enhances your perception of yourselves as a connected unit, a we, and boosts feelings of responsiveness within the relationship. It essentially links the relationship itself with intrinsic enjoyment and vitality.
So it keeps things fresh.
Definitely. This is especially vital for maintaining gratification in long-term relationships, moving beyond that initial excitement phase. It keeps the connection vibrant, deeply satisfying. And interestingly, some research suggests these positive shared experiences can even help modulate or buffer some of the physiological stress responses that might stem from earlier, less positive life experiences.
That's incredible. So enjoying things together can actually have a healing effect, potentially.
Potentially, yes. It strengthens the positive foundation.
And just thinking broadly now, our attachment styles, these patterns we've discussed, they even have implications for our overall physical health, right? Not just emotional well-being. I think I read that insecure styles can be linked to riskier health behaviors.
They absolutely can. The impact is really quite broad, kind of head to toe. Insecure attachment styles, both anxious and avoidant, are associated with a range of riskier health behaviors.
Like
things like increased substance use, maybe riskier sexual behavior, poorer dietary choices sometimes. They're also linked, interestingly, to less adherence to medical treatment plans.
Why would that be?
And more problematic interactions with healthcare providers, perhaps due to difficulty trusting authority figures or maybe trouble communicating needs effectively.
That makes sense.
Anxious attachment specifically has even been tied in some studies to heightened physiological reactions to experimentally induced pain. So, yes, our relational patterns aren't just about emotional well-being. They have a very real, tangible impact on our physical health across our entire lifespan.
Wow. Okay. This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive, really decoding our relationships from the inside out. We've seen how those earliest attachment experiences create these internal models.
The blueprints.
Yeah, the blueprints that shape our expectations, our trust in adult relationships. We've also learned how intentional positive communication, especially that active constructive capitalization, celebrating the good stuff, is just incredibly powerful.
Really is.
And how these patterns are even reflected down to our biology, like with oxytocin.
Indeed, and I think a key takeaway is that relationships aren't just about avoiding the bad. That's important, sure, but it's maybe even more about actively, consciously cultivating the good.
Right. Building connection.
Exactly. We've learned that attachment styles can change, which offers genuine hope, and that communication isn't just about damage control during conflict, but it's fundamentally about enriching our lives and deepening those bonds every single day.
So thinking about all this, what does it all mean for you listening right now? I really encourage you to take a moment, reflect on your own patterns, your interactions, both past and maybe present.
Yeah, and maybe leave you with this thought. Consider which is actually more powerful in your own life and relationships right now. Is it the inevitable negative interactions that you navigate? Or is it the intentional positive experiences that you seek out, that you actively celebrate together? What's one small, active, constructive capitalization you could maybe initiate today? Just one small way to react enthusiastically to someone's good news, knowing how profound that impact could be on long-term satisfaction, connection, and even health. Something to think about.